Alrighty, I need content, so okay.
Okay, yeah.
I am recording now.
Let's split up this conversation into like 10 different videos.
Exactly, right? No, I'm probably gonna
Min-maxing content production.
yeah, right, exactly. Oh my god. I was gonna probably include your comments, the comments that I initially had with you, just so like people know in the future, like, hey, if you like, I'm open to talk as well, or if you want to debate me, Face IQ. I'm like looking at you right now.
Like, hey, face IQ.
Yeah, exactly. Debate me.
I think you've been calling out Face IQ for like a month.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, when's the debate coming? I'm refreshing your channel every day waiting for the debate.
I'm waiting.
I'm actually thinking of going to his channel and being like, hey, when are you gonna debate Blaze?
Exactly, right? That's what I'm waiting for. Because like I genuinely, because my whole point is like I don't necessarily care if I'm wrong. My whole point is just like I want to know like the information as close to the I forgot what you use. There's a term for it. I forgot the term. But basically, I want to know the information. I want to steelman both arguments of the sunlight and no sunlight and see which one holds up better. And then, like, in my view, when I did the steelmanning of both of them, I saw that no sunlight held up better. And I was like, well, if no sunlight holds up better, then, like, I'm down for a debate, right? Because I tried debating the other side already. I tried debating why sunlight is healthy, but then I looked at it and I'm like, I can't really... Because even his argument, for instance, one of his arguments that, like, to me, I sort of view this as maybe not a full understanding of biology, is one of his arguments was like, well, what about nitric oxide being healthy, right? And I look at it and I go, well, all nitric oxide does is it allows for vasodilation. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy, because vasodilation isn't always healthy. If you have really high blood pressure, maybe it is then. But if you have really low blood pressure and you allow for more vasodilation, that's called dying. You die because your heart can't beat anymore, right? So I'm looking at that and I'm like, that doesn't add up. So nitric oxide isn't just inherently healthy. It like serves a biological function and a purpose. Whereas if I look at something, for instance, and I look at like glycation or whatever, this is something that I can't see any benefit to. Like that I'm aware of, there's no benefit in the body for any form of glycation. So that's sort of why I look at it and I go like, well, some of the arguments hold up, some of them don't. And I'm like, I mean, maybe you can make the argument of melatonin as well, but then it's like, how do you really measure circadian rhythm being strong or being weak in this instance, right? And it's like, I don't necessarily think it's that strong of an argument, but I mean,
yeah.
So yeah.
So I was really interested in that because I was the person that could never ever get sunlight. My dad is a gamer. My dad is like really, really, really white, never getting out of the house, never getting any sunlight. And I was raised like that. So I went from that and not being able to stand under the sun for like 5 minutes. No joke. One day I stood under the sun for 10 minutes and I almost passed out in another town. I was visiting another town. I was waiting for the bus and like there was sun and I was like, oh.
Wow.
So I went from that level to sunbathing for 2 hours in like extreme UV in Paraguay, and like at noon. So I've seen both extremes.
How long did it take you to transition? Do you remember or no? I'm just curious.
Well, I didn't do like a transition. Like now I don't go into the sun and now I go. It was like very, very gradual over years. But I know that like it might take a month at most. I would say 2 weeks.
A month or 2 weeks? Okay. Yeah, because I'm really curious about that. Because I'm curious, like, what that time frame is for people in case they ever... Because I always get these comments, right? They're always like, hey, well, I'm exposed to the sun because I'm out working in a construction job, right? It's like, how long will it take me to transition? Right? So, yeah, that's good to know. It's good to know, yeah.
Yeah, and I was vegetarian. So I was raised vegetarian by my parents.
Oh, okay.
And then I couldn't stand the sun. I went carnivore, like cooked carnivore, I would just eat ground beef. That was it. It wasn't a good experience because I didn't have enough fat.
Yeah.
But like when it came to sunlight, it was excellent. And I would say now with primal, animal-based carnivore, all of that is way better for sunlight. You need animal fat.
Yeah.
So like we were going to talk about a little bit about whether tissue remodeling is something good or something bad and why. I'm really interested in hearing your perspective about that.
Yeah, sure.
depending on the diet, people should know that it has different effects. And
Yeah.
I've tried veganism for like 4 months. I almost died, but so being vegetarian, being vegan, I was raised vegetarian. I had never eaten meat. So I know like the most extreme version, like going primal, going carnivore, and like the whole difference between that.
Wow. I mean, that's a big jump.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oof. Oof.
Yeah.
Have you, just out of curiosity, have you got
Yeah.
any ultrasound done for your gallbladder or no?
My gallbladder.
Yeah, I'm just
No.
curious if you have. Okay, because
No.
I'm just maybe if you're able to, if it's like cheap for you or whatever, like I would recommend it just to see because I know from some other people as well as myself, people who grew up in that sort of a household or grew up with like a not necessarily much meat, if almost any meat in your case, right? They have a little bit of gallbladder problems. So whenever they're going carnivore, for instance, right, they actually have problems initially going carnivore. And I'm just curious if you have like a bile sludge at all or not. If you've ever got that measured, because if you do, it might give you better results. Because for me, for instance, like my results before and after biosludge, I had like massive, and I really mean massive levels of energy difference. I'd probably say it was also after surgery too, so I did have it after surgery. Surgery definitely did make me have a little more biosludge, but before and after, I went from being able to, for instance, focus in League for only maybe like 3 hours or 2 hours, which is like very low in my like in how much I play League, to probably like 6 or 7. So it was like a really big difference for me. It really affected also my fat soluble vitamin absorption, especially vitamin D. My vitamin D was like abysmal, in fact. So yeah, I was just really curious on the if you did you have that on an ultrasound done or no?
Well, I never tested that, but I know my bile's really good. Like they
Okay.
have very, very good digestion.
Okay, that's really good then.
And I
Yeah.
think that's because I like to consume a lot of fat, like
Okay.
a lot of fat. So I started with a little bit and then more and more and more and more. So I think my gallbladder started adapting as did my liver.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, I was just curious because I know coming from that background personally, I was that's what I had. So that's good you don't have it. That's
Yeah.
really good you don't have it. Yeah.
Yeah, and something we were talking about is like I do consultations with people. I try helping people and coming from where they are. So I know that people have sometimes bile, gallbladder, and liver problems in digesting fat. So yeah, we need to work on that with the specific person, specific case. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Speaking consultations, I made a website actually just today. So
Interesting.
I know it'll
Wow.
eventually it'll be
Yeah.
there when this video comes out.
Yes.
That might take a little bit of time.
Yeah. Check it out, guys. Check it out.
Check this out too. Actually, I'm sort of curious. Okay, but go ahead with your questions. Tissue remodeling. You have me very interested. I don't hear many people talk about this. Go ahead.
Okay, so first, when it comes to debates and knowledge acquisition, for me, try to go to the deepest level first, not like start with surface arguments or evidence or whatever. Like, try to get into what is the core belief or the underlying structure. So, from what I understood, your view is tissue remodeling causes aging because the remodeling itself is what causes the aging process. There's the deterioration with toxins, but aging itself occurs through let's say, using up your body, the battery, through tissue remodeling. Is that right?
Yeah, basically. So it's pretty much stem cells to keep it really short. I think, from what I'm aware of, anyways, unless they prove this wrong. If they prove this argument fundamentally wrong, then maybe I could be wrong. But there is like a limited amount of dividing you can do based on stem cells. So if this is proved wrong, maybe. But from what I'm aware of, it isn't proved wrong. So that's basically the main reason behind it. Yeah.
Okay. I know that some foods have a lot of stem cells, such as bone marrow. And I know that sometimes people are going to use that to regrow their hair and like get some, like it's not only stem cells when you use bone marrow for your hair, and not only bone marrow, but we might get stem cells from other sources. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's possible, I'm not necessarily sure about the conversion. So, uh, this is where the human body gets really complicated. So I know that when it comes to the human body, just because something is healthy or your body needs it, it doesn't necessarily always mean that it's your body is able to get it just from that ideal source. So, for instance, the best example of this is actually seed oil. So people are always making this argument of, oh, you need linoleic acid, you need linoleic acid, you need linoleic acid, right? And where do you get that from? Well, obviously, like seed oil is a great, right? And then they're trying to promote like seed oil being healthy. But then if you look at it, and it's not just linoleic acid, it's the conjugated form. So it's like a very specific thing. That's number one. And number two, like when your body, just because your body, during the digestive process, for instance, like here, the best example of this, in my opinion, I think is collagen. So just because you eat collagen doesn't necessarily mean your body uses it as collagen. Like it has to break it down and then rebuild stuff back up, and that's why exactly you can't just eat collagen and be perfectly fine. So for instance, these people trying to like advertise collagen supplements or whatever, which is like the really common one I see, right? They're trying to advertise collagen supplements or whatever. The problem is that even if you're eating the collagen, it doesn't matter because your body isn't actually making collagen out of that collagen. It has to do this like really roundabout process in order to be made into collagen. So that's sort of like the annoying thing about the human body. So when it comes to what you're talking about with stem cells, I think there are some things that I'm aware of. There's like the main one that I'm aware of that really works for stem cells, and it's a supplement. Like once again, it's a cereal thing, but that's only because I tested it in myself. And I don't know if you saw my video where I get a GI map and I have my zonulin levels. Basically, my zonulin levels.
I actually didn't.
Okay, yeah, I made a video on that, and that was it actually wasn't super popular, by the way. I think at the time, it only compared to my usual views at that time, which was I think 4K or 3K, it had like 1K or 1.1K, and I did a test. I did a GI map where basically they analyze your stool or whatever, and they measure what's in your stool. And zonulin is one of the things they measure for the mucus layer from in your gut, right? And I got that measured, and if you look at the zonulin, it was in the process of healing. But what's weird is that even though it was in the process of healing, there was clear, like I was experiencing clear symptoms, like poor digestive symptoms. So that was an indicator that Stem Enhance, and that's why I say it over and over again, I think you shouldn't use Stem Enhance if you have an underlying problem, because if you do, it might mask it. Like in my case, it might have actually masked the problem. So this this bile sludge problem, I could have potentially actually had this for years on end, maybe 3 or 4 years. And that's possibly because when I went carnivore, I went down this giant rabbit hole, and then eventually I also found Stem Enhance. And during this time, I was using carnivore, and my body was healing itself like really rapidly. But the problem was that I wasn't able to digest any of the fat and get basically much value out of the fat. But my body was healing itself so much faster than it was damaging itself that I couldn't see a difference. So that was a really important point with Stem Enhance, and that's why I think like you shouldn't use it if you have an underlying problem that can't be fixed by Stem Enhance, because if you do, you're gonna end up like me, and you're gonna have a problem for like 3 or 4 years that you don't know until you're like, wait a second, you go off of Stem Enhance and you're like, it's a huge difference, right? So that's one thing I would say in terms of stem cells. Bone marrow I don't exactly know the details of bone marrow, so. You said people use bone marrow for their hair, or?
Yes.
So it could work. I know that for my view of the tissue remodeling thing, right? In general, just allowing blood flow in that area more often would most likely allow for better regrowth. That's probably also why, for that matter, they had this is a long time ago. I saw this YouTube video, and this guy talked about the study about how you basically can like massage your head or whatever in order to help with hair growth. And like some people were like, oh yeah, this like worked for me. And then some people in the comments, obviously, they're going to be like, yeah, this didn't work for me or whatever, right? So it's like it worked for some people, didn't work for other people, right? So I think that's sort of like another indicator of the importance of blood flow in terms of tissue remodeling and allowing for whatever you want to focus on, you must allow resources to get to that area in some way or another.
Yeah.
So you could do
And
that a
this is
lot of
something
ways.
that should really be again in healing.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
let's say you start going carnivore, you start going primal, you start going any diet. Again, like primal is not only a diet, it's also a framework. But let's say you eat the foods in that list. You might not actually heal what you need to heal because it's going to prioritize your internal organs first, your most essential organs. And then it's going to go to skin, then it's going to go to hair, then it's going to go to your eyes, then it's going to go to like your eyebrows, then it's going to go to your thyroid and others. So there's a kind of order in which things heal. And there are ways to go around that order so you can heal things first or over something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's actually pretty important to mention. Yeah, because you might have a lot more problems than you don't know, and the problem is when you switch your diet, your body's fixing other things before it fixes the thing that you are noticing it most about.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's a pretty important thing to mention.
Yeah, and there are some videos where, for example, you get a vegetarian or vegan mother's placenta, then an animal-based carnivore mother's placenta, and you can see the difference. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And if you think about this, sometimes you have good skin and you're like, okay, my skin is healthy, therefore I'm healthy. But we need to remember that fat detoxifies your body. So it like literally goes out of your body and your skin is lubrified. But like the internal might not because the fat is like being sucked out of the internal part of the toxins and it's dry inside. So skin is one indication of health, but it's not the only one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, because I know some people, for instance, they'll have like they might have like really good skin, but they'll have like pain in their bones, for instance, right? And from what I'm aware of,
Yeah.
the pain in their bones, if like some arthritis pain or whatever, um, possible personal experience because I think I've had that in my back. I'm not sure if that was a muscle or a bone exactly, but it was really painful and I could barely move. I could barely play sports at that time.
Wow.
Um, I think that could be oxalates, and that definitely could be like plant related. And I don't know how long the process takes to heal through that. Because when I went carnivore, I definitely was not exercising like I did when I was really, really young. And I was on the two varsity teams. So it was really, really exhausting in terms of sports. So I can't necessarily speak for the healing process, exactly how long that might take for anybody out there who is going through that.
Yeah, no, something also that's really important is like in terrain theory, you're supporting your whole body to heal. And if you're feeling pain while you're healing, it's because your nervous system's not lubrified enough. So let's say you have something inside your finger. Let's say there is a lot of oxalates, there is some inflammation or whatever. You need to remove that through fats. But sometimes you won't have enough fat to have your nerves around lubricated. And because of that, when the fat gets out, it starts destroying things. Even because some molecules, when they're heated or they're chemically altered, they're basically like crystals. They destroy and delacerate your nervous cells inside. So that's why you feel pain. Sometimes you might heal and not feel pain because you're eating enough fat or in the right way. But if you're not, then you can feel pain even though you're healing. You're like, oh my God, my symptoms are not going away. But you are healing, but you're feeling all the pain of the toxins getting out.
I think it could be something like that. I know from what I'm aware of, oxalic acid, you can basically end up getting calcium oxalate crystals around that area, around like for instance if you had like a pain in your finger or whatever, right, and you had finger pain, that definitely could be a possibility in my head, anyways. Because I do know that there's something to do with oxalate crystals around arthritis areas, spots that end up causing arthritis. Yeah.
So something, just checking in. So the whole like premise on tissue remodeling that's against sunlight, against exercise, against like plant-based diets, against basically everything, is tissue remodeling. And tissue remodeling comes from limited stem cells.
Yeah, basically, pretty much
That's,
that's the
yeah,
main, or that's my main thought and my main
yeah,
argument behind it. Yeah.
yeah. Because I see some people like on the other side that are promoting exercise, that are promoting fasting, cold plunging, all the other things. They're like, oh, your body's not necessarily a candle. It's more like the more energy you use, the more energy is produced, and to a certain point that's true, but you're borrowing future energy to put in the present and use that more.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
let's
yeah.
say a short-term strategy. And I think the whole debate is like, are we candles where we can like burn faster, or are we a system that can grow and not necessarily age by growing?
Hmm.
Like I think that's a fundamental debate whenever I'm seeing anybody promoting anything.
That's an interesting thought. That's an interesting thought. I could see sides to both arguments. So one of the main arguments behind my thought, anyways, when it comes to the tissue remodeling
Yeah.
thing, is if you look at, for instance, just like feeding rats like a limited amount of food. From what I'm aware of, like rats fed a limited amount would live longer. But I mean, it does sort of make me wonder. I think there could be some aspects of the other argument that could be true as well.
Well, I think we're going to discuss about like cognitive development and cognitive efficiency.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that's something that really happens. Like when you like stress your brain to memorize to do stuff, then it starts doing it better. And I think like the I'm gonna I don't know, I'm gonna leave it for later if you want to cut it off and like make another video about like cognitive things.
No, 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 no. That's.
But
I'm really into that.
yeah,
I'm thinking, in fact, about making a playlist on why you should play video games and a giant. Like, I can come up with
yeah,
so many reasons, cognitively speaking, what video games
yeah.
can like help improve people do, because I know a lot of people can, for instance, have some sort of a problem, and there is one video game usually that can simulate and force your brain to work in that way where
Yeah.
it wouldn't usually work based on your current environment, right? And because of that, you're like struggling. I mean, it's just, oh, I think video games are amazing, but that's something else. Okay.
Yeah, I think a good transition to that's gonna be talking about RPG because I'm an RPG narrator, and
Oh,
like I do think there are a lot of benefits and transitions from like psychology to RPG to video games. I think like that's a very good talk. So, just for us to wrap up this part about modeling. So, basically, we as humans, we can burn our candles faster. So, we can exercise, we can be more muscular, we can do things, we can start training for running, but okay, what's the purpose? So, let's say I'm working on a farm. Now I have tissue remodeling, I'm better able to work on a farm. Now I can get food for my family. Okay, then that's, let's say, good tissue remodeling. Because I'm burning a little bit more, but I'm preventing my candle from being destroyed because I don't have food to eat.
yeah, exactly.
So it's a little bit of stress to prevent more stress. But I think that people like overestimate this and like, okay, I'm gonna stress myself the most to prevent all stress. Okay, but you're gonna live like 20 years. Okay, do you want to live like? I think this is cultural. You were talking in a video about Gen Z adapting to their environment, and I think this is basically what's going on. People are always scared. There's always like housing uncertainty, financial uncertainty, like violence and other things. So people are like, okay, I need to be strong, and I need to be the smartest, and I need to be the richest, and oh my God, I need to like prevent and defend myself from all of this. And then there's childhood things. I'm like, what are you running from? Like literally, when I see people running on the street, I'm like, okay, what are you running from?
Yeah, exactly, right? So that exactly. That's sort of something that goes through my head. Pretty much exactly that. Yeah. No, that's
Yeah, so yeah, I think humans are able to burn a candle faster for more energy in the short term, so they can prevent something in the long term. But I don't think necessarily that's the only strategy.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like instead of being, let's say, persistence hunters, like running and trying to bludgeon somebody, like, well, you can set up a trap. Like, be smart for one day, set up a trap and like sit down.
Yeah, exactly, right? I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why humans succeeded in terms of like a lot of this evolution stuff. I'm just thinking about it. I feel like what humans would do is they would work together, they would use their brain, they would put less energy into the expensive tissue remodeling process, which I believe to be muscles. I believe muscles to be by far the most
Yeah,
expensive tissue remodeling process. And if you look at like a lot of these other animals, for instance, like if you want best muscles, go get like a gorilla, or go get like a lion, or go get one of these rhinos, or these giant like hulking beasts, basically, right? that's what the peak of muscle tissue remodeling basically looks like. It looks like that. And then what's the other end of the spectrum, pretty much, which is more so us, I believe, anyways, or we're sort of like regressing at this point. But I believe that we are the other end of the spectrum, which is pretty much we are instead of that tissue remodeling being allocated into muscles so much and into like the body functioning stronger, it's more so into the brain functioning better and allowing for our body to have to go through less stress because we know how to avoid it. So there's so many things, for instance, where you could see like a clear instance of the brain not being adapted to enough, and therefore the body sort of suffers. And you can see this in animals. And one of the animals is like a koala, for instance, where their brain is basically so underdeveloped pretty much that they can only pick up leaves off of a tree. They can't even pick up a leaf off the ground. That's how like brain dead basically they are, right? So like I think there's a lot of things that go into cognitive development that people I don't think they realize how advanced their brain is until they like really start using it. And it's like, wow, I'm able to do this much over an animal. Like I'm able to realize so much over an animal. Like an animal will react. That's like the biggest example in my opinion is animals are always reactive. They don't have that ability to be proactive. Humans, on the other hand, are proactive. I would say maybe some carnivorous species are probably proactive in some cases, but they're nowhere near as proactive as humans. I mean, humans are basically like you said, we can set up traps. Like we have set up traps in the past. This has been done. We've also basically have parasitic relationships with animals in order to prevent us from having to move. Like the people over in the African tribe, I forgot what their name was.
Yeah.
The
Hansa, Maasai.
Maasai, yeah, the Maasai, right?
Maasai.
They're basically they're getting a cow. They're sticking the cow. And then they're just drinking the blood. They're spending no time hunting or whatever, right? They're lazy as fuck, to be honest. In my view, this is super super lazy behavior, and I think that's a very good indicator that that's the brain working. That's the brain functioning. Because if their brain wasn't functioning, they wouldn't be able to, for instance, tame that animal. They wouldn't be able to keep that animal within a specific vicinity, not let that animal die to another carnivorous species, by the way, because they do have that. They have to worry about that, and they have to like build a fence around that and stuff. And in doing so, that tissue remodeling during that time is probably much more intensive because they have to build the barricade. They have to do all this. They have to build the hut. They have to do all this stuff during that time. But in the long term, it allows for basically no stress in the future or minimal stress in the future because now they have multiple animals that they can just basically live off of as parasites, basically, right? And they drink the blood as much as they want, drink the milk, right? They're basically just using the animal for resources, and they're being lazy, which is smart. I think that's what you're supposed to be doing. That's how humans evolved, right? So that's my view, anyways. But yeah.
I think like people glorify hunting, and like people in the primal area, especially, they glorify hunting. And sure, it's gonna be fun. Like you can get a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
Like, I was practicing archery, and you can go in the forest and be like, "Wow, this looks like a game. You're having fun." But I honestly think like farming when you're talking about animals, like pastoralism, is an advanced form of hunting.
Yeah.
You basically hunt into the future.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I completely agree. Hunting can be fun because it's like a game, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but the whole point in the end is it's basically you're trying to not use those resources right now, and you're being lazy. And like people always say like being lazy is bad, but when I think about it more and I like give it a little more thought, and I'm like, I'm not necessarily sure if being lazy is bad. Being lazy might just mean, in some cases it could mean bad, because if you're not even putting the work in order to get that benefit in the future, then that might be a bad laziness. But being really lazy to the point where you do so much work in one case and that benefits you all the way towards the end here, for instance, and then you don't have to do anything for here and then onwards, I think that's not bad. That's good. That's smart.
Yeah. So there's a behavioral inhibition from like depression and stuff like that. It's mostly psychological. Like I do think diet has an influence, but I think it's mostly psychological. And there's you like, okay, I'm not gonna waste my energy. There's something like being inhibited, and there's wasting your energy. Like, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
smart. Be lazy,
Yeah.
please. Be lazy.
Yeah, that's sort of.
Like, if everything goes right with my plans, which I'm gonna keep private, well, by when I'm 22 now. When I turn 23, I'm gonna be retired.
Oh, wow.
So like, I'm not gonna have to work the rest of my life. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
life.
That would be pretty nice.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That would be really nice.
Yeah,
Holy
I'm
shit.
gonna work on my own farm so I can have my food, and like I love to do that. Like I love to try making different things, like different primal cuisines. I think that's really nice. But that's something I like. It's like playing a game. Like life is a game. Life is for you to have fun. So yeah, if I'm like getting a little stress in my body by doing an activity, but I'm having fun, like I don't mind. But yeah, like
Yeah.
if I need to go and act as a slave to work, it's like no.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, I completely agree on that one.
So, and I think this is a good point to, like, we were talking about laziness, and people were glorifying hunting. So, I think there is a specific point that people don't understand emotional salience. I can give, like, my phone the biggest emotional salience in the world. Like, oh, this is the first phone, like, first good phone I bought. Oh, this is my wife. Wait, wait, wait. Here. Like this is
Oh,
why I'm happy.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So anyway, I can say, oh, this is the first good phone I bought with my own money when I was a teenager. Blah 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 blah. So that means a lot to me. And if somebody breaks my phone, I'm pissed now. Okay. Or I can just say, okay, this is now a cheap phone. I can get another one, whatever. So it depends on the emotion I have about it. And most people get angry about so many things in the black pill. It's basically that, honestly. People are like, oh, and then like you need to have this cancel tilt, and no, oh my god, you're not, I don't know, you're not a Chad and you have a wife. Oh, you're it's like, okay, yeah. Like the emotional salience for them is so like screwed up. I'm like, oh my god.
Oh,
Anyway, so
real quick, can
yeah.
you, for anybody, so this is a little bit important. For anybody listening, can you explain emotional salience and what the definition of that? So people listening.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I don't know if I have a very good definition, but I have a good image of it. Let's say you have a map here of every possible thing in the world, all your memories. Emotional salience is things that, let's say, trigger you in a good way or a bad way more. So the map has a salience, like little mountains, and what triggers you more in a positive or negative way is your emotional salience.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anybody
It's
out
like,
there wondering, he explained it. There you
yeah.
go.
Anyway, so people have emotional salience for different things, and they base their reality on that. So people think, okay, no, being lazy is bad. That goes back to like that sociological stress people face. Like, oh, I need to go to the gym, and I need to go to the army, and I need to cut my hair, and I need to like walk straight on this social line. And like, okay, for you that might be important, and you're gonna maybe feel pleasure if you achieve that because like your brain if you achieve something your brain's going to give you a reward if it's good or bad
Yeah.
but you're achieving something okay
Yeah, exactly.
and then you see somebody that's getting what they want not working at all and then let's say you're 60 years old your body's screwed up and somebody's 20 and they're tired and then you're like angry it's like why would you be and that's because of emotional salience and that's I think this is a huge advantage for humans, like huge, huge advantage, because we have like the concrete world and the symbolic world. That's and we can have emotional salience in the symbolic world. So a good example is people love celebrities and they're like, oh, this person's amazing. Oh my God. Oh, their puppy died and they're so sad. And like they get super emotional about it because that's important to them. But it's not concrete. They're not living that, but they're living that in their symbolic world. And I think that comes from us humans being able to abstract and being able to have language. And as humans, like we have language, we can plan things, and we can plan things, we can trap. And okay, now we trapped an animal, we have food for a long time, what we're gonna do? Then we start like trading stories. And we learn through the stories of elders. They teach us how to make traps, they teach us like social life, they teach us everything. And let's say they're telling us a story about like an animal coming. Like I need to be scared. Like if somebody's not scared when they are being told the tiger's coming, they're not going to learn as effectively. So basically, we were trained into that symbolic world, and we can have emotional salience in that. I think that's also why stories, video games, movies, books, they all matter so much for us. We can learn through language and we can feel based on that. And I think that's why RPGs are amazing because you can go on an adventure, you don't stress your physical body, and you have the emotional rewards about it.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that's a really good point. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of actually, you brought up one interesting point that I thought, which is stories were basically told by elders, and a lot of this, from what I'm aware of, when I read some of this like these religious texts, I'm not even always so sure that these people fully were all about the God itself, because I look at a lot of these religious texts and they just sound like teachings to me. They just sound like a story to me in the end, like a story about like how you should well, the one of the biggest ones that I remember anyways is so I think the King Solomon in Christianity in the Old Testament or something, where this guy was basically telling King Solomon, do not have many wives because more wives will lead to more chaos. And he basically means, from what I'm aware of, more drama. So he's trying to teach like that this comes with a downside. And even though it might seem like a good thing, even though it might seem like something you might want, you don't actually know how much chaos it's going to cause in the end for you. And it doesn't have to do with just like this multiple wives thing, or it's like all these different stories in religion. It could also be Kronos, for that matter, which is basically Kronos eating his children because he's scared that his children are going to replace him, which is what I kind of view that as like the current modern era. Basically, this is basically what the United States is like. It's basically all the old people are pretty much in these positions of power, and in doing so, that they always advocate for themselves, and in advocating for themselves, that allows for less advocacy for the young people. And then young people are like, that's why young people are sort of like, I think I would say, pissed in the United States, or they just are like, ah, man, I don't care, fuck it, or whatever. I mean, you're not in the United States, luckily, but
Yeah.
but over here, that's basically what a lot of like young people's mindset is like. And I feel like that's just another example of religion and stories being told through religion. And all it's trying to do, all religion is basically doing, is actually just telling a story, but it's telling it through the lens of their gods. In this case, in the Greeks,
Yeah.
it's their gods, but in Christianity, it's that god. But in the end, it's all basically telling a story and telling like this is what happens when you do this. This is what happens when the old people constantly. Yeah, so there's like a lot of, very, very good point. I like that you point that out. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
and like I like studying religions, and something that clicked one day, the Bible was written for pre-literate people. People didn't know how to read. They
Yes,
didn't know that reading was possible.
yes,
How are you gonna memorize something? Because like I was having a discussion with my wife and a very smart friend of ours, and we were talking what was the best invention of humanity. And like we were arguing, and then something like said externalization of ideas. That might be through writing, through counting stones or whatever. But if you can externalize your ideas, something changes. Something fundamental changes. Anyway, like religions were made for pre-literate people. They couldn't externalize their ideas into something that they could memorize. So how can you memorize something? Imagine a king that has so many wives that you're like, wow, that story is so impressive because you have emotional salience. So like you remember that emotionally and you're like, okay, oh, this is something happening in my life as well. So oh, you remember that king? You shouldn't do that as well. So I think that was the way that stories would be transmitted.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
So yeah, we were talking about RPGs. So I don't think we should only live in a world of fantasy. I think we can get to a point where we are completely disconnected and we neglect, let's say, our physical bodies, our families, like our whole ecosystem. But if you're able to actually organize your ecosystem and then live in a symbolic world, you can live for so much longer, so much less stress. You're going to be smarter. You can make better decisions. And yeah, and I think it's a very, very good way to socialize. and explore your psyche. Because let's say one thing about AI that is very good as in a therapeutic sense is the low social cost. So if I start talking to you every day and I come to you with a very big problem, it takes a toll on the relationship between two people. But if I can take the biggest toll to a computer and then I just bring like, oh, I had this reflection about myself, that helps. And the RPG has something very similar, where you can be put in a situation where you need to play a character that has a characteristic you want to have but you don't, and then you need to start developing that in a safe world. Because what's going to happen if the character does shit? Okay, the narrator is going to kill the character and whatever. Like nothing happened to you, but you
Yeah.
were able to have that internal transformation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I view a lot of these like I do wonder what I mean. I sort of know kind of a little bit, but I do wonder exactly what this hate is towards like video games and towards this like fantasy sort of thing. I do kind of wonder where that hate comes from. I mean, I have a
Yeah.
feeling it might just be like, oh, we didn't do that back in our day. It might be like something like, we never did this before, therefore you should never do this or something. I don't know exactly,
Well,
but
yeah. Well, I honestly think there's an emotional salience as humans that we don't like lazy members of the tribe. So if I'm making an effort and there's another person that's spending their time playing video games, what the hell? And the person like gets mad at you because you're
yeah.
not putting in the same effort as them. So I think it comes from that. And like I personally have a certain vendetta against video games, but it's specifically when it becomes a form of escapism. Like when people are getting away from reality and like letting everything rot around them. And like as I said, if you want to live in a world of fantasy but you take care of your ecosystem, I see no problem in that. But if you let everything around rot, then I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
So it's not the video games themselves.
Yeah. Huh. Very interesting. So far, this is a very interesting talk. Any other questions? You could blast questions away.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go into the cognitive aspect. What do you believe are the cognitive enhancements from video games?
Ooh, 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 ooh. That is a very good question. Okay, so I think video games let you do a lot. Okay, well, first it depends which video game you're playing, but in
Good
terms of
answer.
yeah, so that's probably the biggest one I will say, because there are certain video games like you won't necessarily get the same benefit out of some video games more than others. So for instance, if you're trying to train uh, cognitive ease in this case, or your brain's ability to adapt to some sort of situation, then I would say certain video games are definitely better than that of others. I would specifically also say that it probably would be best to go into a competitive sense of probably a MOBA, RTS, or some game that forces you to usually think. Counter-Strike, I could say, might let you think, like a RTS, real-time shooter. I think that's what it's called.
Real-time strategy, maybe?
Oh, no, yeah, thank you. RTS is real-time strategy. What's CS:GO considered? A first-person shooter? FPS,
FPS.
right? Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
FPS.
FPS. Oh, there's so many of these terms, I forgot. But yeah, an FPS basically, right? So I would say an FPS, I'm not fully so sure that would train cognitive ease. I feel like that would more so train like reaction time. Definitely reaction time, if anything. It would also probably train like precision. In this case, I don't know if I'd call it like hand-eye coordination or mouse-eye coordination. I don't know which one you would use there, but one of those probably. Yeah, so I'm not really too sure what I would say, right? That would probably be more FPS, but in terms of cognitive ease and learning to adapt to a specific situation very quickly and trying to come up with the best solution to that situation under a very set and small amount of time, and also with unknown variables, I would definitely say like a MOBA or a real-time strategy is probably best for that. Or any sort of strategy game, maybe a puzzle as well. A puzzle, but it'd have to be like a limited time puzzle. You'd have to like incorporate some time element to it. But I would say those are the best ones, and the reason is because in those games, the way it trains your brain to correct itself over and over again is you have to also approach this information correctly. I will say that's the first part. Because if you don't approach this information correctly, you will end up like every single person in bronze, silver, or gold who has been there for 10 years, 20 years, or whatever, and they are flaming people like crazy. All right? That's not how you approach a situation. You don't say everybody's trash, I'm a challenger player, and I'm just stuck in gold because I'm unlucky. What you do is you say, why exactly am I wrong? That's basically the first question that you have to ask when you jump into the video game. You're asking, am I wrong? And then you see the results of whether or not you are right or you are wrong. If you win the game and if you played the game successfully, then you could say, I'm right. And then if you lost the game, then you can say, I'm wrong. I'd say there's a little more detail to it, but that's like the basics of it, right? And those games really, really force you to train your decision making. In my case, I'm a jungler, so it in League of Legends, so it definitely trains the decision making. But if you're a laner, it probably doesn't necessarily train the same level of decision making. It's most likely more micro aspects of the game, tracking cooldowns, spacing. But that's like very League of Legends specific stuff. So I would say that's for RTS and for MOBAs. FPS would be reaction time and hand-eye coordination. There's a lot of different genres. There's too many genres of game. Yeah. I can't go into all of them.
It's like the same as talking about books. Like,
exactly. Yeah, there's so many kinds of books, right? So you could train it in a lot of different ways. It really just depends, in my opinion, in the game, like what the game is in the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's one of them, in my opinion, one of the great ones in order to train like how you approach stress is a game like Giving Up, or I think it's called Giving Up or something. It's basically this guy in a pot, and he has a sledgehammer, and he's like trying to jump. He's doing this with the sledgehammer. If you've ever seen people or streamers play that game, they get infuriated. They scream. They are like punching the keyboard and stuff. They get absolutely infuriated, and that's because I think that game is a really good example of trying to teach you how to approach stress better, because it's really infuriating. Like, I look at the people in that game, and they're all the way at level 99 or whatever, basically, not level 99, but they're in the air, right? They're really high, and they drop all the way down back to 0, and they have to do it all over again, and they're like screaming, right? They're going crazy. So this is sort of why I look at it, and I go like, that's a kind of game that would teach you how to approach stress differently. Because a lot of people, I think also that's a big thing actually, especially in the modern day, some people with like anger issues and stuff, their ability to approach stressful situations is like impaired, or it's not necessarily as ideal. Because when you're approaching stress like that, you're basically letting the animal take over within rather than like the human. So basically, you're becoming more animal and more animal and less human. You're becoming more reactive and not proactive. Like, humans are supposed to be proactive, and
supposed to be nonchalant.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Exactly. Yeah, so there's a lot of, well, I mean, that's a completely different playlist that not many people watch, but I will say that I think is very, very important. In my view, it's very, very important. So yeah.
Yeah, and okay, so now I'm gonna get deep into this because do you like to read books?
Certain books. I like The Name of the Wind. That is my favorite book of all time. That is.
I've actually never read it. Okay.
But I fucking love it. Best book in my opinion. I can literally relive that book right now in my head. It's so good. That's what. Thank you for bringing this up again. It lets you experience something outside without having to basically work your body out. It lets you experience an adventure. Like that book, I experience a whole new adventure in my head. Doesn't exist anywhere in the world, but I experience it, and it's fucking amazing, right? So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. And I think like there's so much in the internal world that we can live that's not outside, and that's only accessible to us. And I'm like, okay, this is so unique. So I asked you about books because there's a book called The Shallows, and I'm not a person to actually cite my sources. I like actually take stuff from books, ferment them in my head, make my own ideas, and then I spit them out. And when people say, "Oh, where did you take that?" I'm like, my idea. And if somebody gets an idea from me and ferment in their heads, I don't want credit. It's like, whatever, it's your idea, your head.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, there's a book called The Shallows where I was studying neuroplasticity. And for example, cab drivers in London, they had a part of the brain related to spatial memory that was hyperdeveloped. And I don't remember, but they needed to compensate with another area of the brain becoming smaller. It's really interesting. Anyway, and if I'm not mistaken, there was an experiment done with video gamers as well, in certain areas of their brains were bigger and more developed. And we know from certain kinds of therapy that if you work out a certain part of your brain that is responsible for multiple functions, let's say it's responsible for top-down regulation, so your emotions are in check, it's responsible for planning, it's responsible for focus. If you train focus, then you're gonna better be able to top-down regulate and you're gonna be able to plan things out better. If you train that specific part of your brain. It's almost like saying that if you go to the gym and lift a bar like this, you're better able to like hold your daughter and throw her up like this.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing. Anyway, so, and there are tools to train parts of your brain. There are a very, let's say, bare bones tools like duo and back and quad and back. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're basically tools to train your working memory. And by training your working memory, they train other parts of your brain, such as executive control and regulation. It's really, really interesting. But it's boring. It's boring as hell. Like you basically like there are some squares here, and then you need to memorize where there is a collar and where there's a ladder. But you don't memorize which one is now. You need to memorize which one was like 4 turns ago. And you need to say,
Okay.
oh, was this caller here 4 turns ago? Was that letter here 4 turns ago? Was this sound here 4 turns ago or something? It is like really weird. Your brain's like, anyway. And there are like some studies that suggest this is like really good. And like I talk to people that do this every day for hours. And they're like, they have substantial increases in their like cognitive development. And I find this interesting. I need to research more about it. Like I can't make very good affirmations about it. And I've heard some years ago now about something, if I'm not mistaken, called School of the Future that Elon Musk was developing. And it was supposed to be like very high IQ people would be kind of trained as teachers, and also very high IQ students would go there, and they would get a new problem that was completely new, never seen in history, and trying to solve that new problem. And the teacher would basically be a facilitator for that and giving them strategies and brain shortcuts and ways to do that. So that might, let's say, increase intelligence. And finally, I would say I think certain kinds of stress as a kid can develop certain parts of your cognition. If you're, let's say, always encouraged to read when you were a kid, and you read a lot, a lot, a lot, and you start reading earlier, I think your, let's say, I think it's a back part of your brain that's responsible for languages that might hyperdevelop. So, what do you think of the 3 things I told you?
Yeah. So I would say first, when it comes to the development, so if you were saying that one part gets more developed than the other based on you working it, to me that would sort of that would kind of make sense. I'm not entirely sure, but that would make a lot of sense. That might be part of the reason why I think men, I believe, have much better executive function than women, just based on a biology standpoint. But I think that's also genetic as well. So it doesn't mean a woman can't train it, but it's just like extra stressful. You can. I mean, it's not like it's impossible. In terms
We have
of
women bodybuilders, so
yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, people will do anything at this point. To me, I mean, it doesn't surprise me if people, if somebody starts like flying, using their feet only or something, like they're shooting stuff off their feet, flames off of their feet, right? And they put a chicken on as their head or something. It wouldn't like. I'd be like, yeah, sure. I wasn't. I mean, nothing. It's sort of like I'm not expecting anything so crazy anymore because of all the craziness that's currently happened. I feel like it's like you can already see so much craziness. If you're exposed to the internet enough, you'll just look at it. You'll go like, wow, there's a lot of really crazy shit out there, right? So, I mean, you never really think of some of these things, but people really do them, I guess. in terms of, you mentioned one part of the brain developing more than the other. What were the other ones that you mentioned?
Well, there are tools to do that, such as getting random problems to solve that are completely new and being able to be facilitated by another intelligent person, and brain stress as a kid.
Brain stress as a kid and being facilitated by another person. Okay. So I guess I'll start with the facilitated by another person. I think being facilitated by another person in terms of like when it comes to approaching a problem of some sort can be helpful. In some cases, I will say my experience with that has been very not so good. I think people's ability, I don't know what it takes to be a good facilitator exactly, but I haven't necessarily, I can't say I've had like a teacher who was like a super, super, super amazing facilitator for some sort. Maybe, I mean, maybe I had one. Her name was like Miss Hayward or maybe Mr. Baltimore. I mean, they were both history teachers though, oddly enough. I haven't really had a good one for math, particularly. I haven't had a good one. I feel like when teachers are trying to facilitate in school, for instance, they don't necessarily do a particularly good job. They might just be limited by like regulations and stuff, like what they can and they can't do. But I think being a facilitator takes like a really different mindset. Like that's a very, very hard mindset because you have to be especially resilient to what I would call an annoyance. Somebody would ask you the same question like 10 times and you're like, Jesus Christ, I've told you the 10th time this is what the answer is, right? So I feel like that's a problem that a facilitator would have to go through. They'd have to be, I feel like a facilitator's brain is like super rare. Like to really get a good one, it'd be super, super hard, super rare. I'm not so sure that's easy. They'd also have to be very knowledgeable in a lot of aspects. So they would have to be able to know. Yeah, that's hard. That's really, really hard. I feel like the best facilitator would have to be somebody who's old. It'd have to be somebody who's old and who has experience. That's the only thing that makes any sense to me. I could not see a young person be a facilitator. I'd like lose my mind if I had to tell somebody the answer for the 10th time. It'd be like, yeah, this is the damn answer. I told you it like 20 hours ago or something. You still haven't learned, right? So, but an old person, I feel like an old person could do that maybe. I feel like it's somebody who would probably have dealt with grandkids already. So that's probably something pretty important, I think. Somebody who's who's dealt with kids multiple times, because that, I think, is a pretty important part in terms of the facilitator process, is probably dealing with kids, which you have to learn. I don't think that's going to be easy, my opinion anyways. When I have my future kids, I don't think it's going to be easy. But it is going to have to be something that I learn, right? Yeah. So that's going to be hard. I'd say, yeah, I could only see old people do that.
Actually, I'm a teacher by trade, and I've taught kids, and it's amazing. It's really amazing.
It's amazing. It probably feels good. I would just lose my mind having to explain the answer for the 10th time. Like because I did teach kids too. I taught kids tennis. No. I taught kids. Taught kids tennis, and I think it was math. I can't remember what it was exactly, but I did those two things when I was young, and I was like, I was going crazy. I did not want to teach. I just wanted to do. I wanted to, like, when every single time I was teaching, I just wanted to be like, this is how you do it, done, right? I didn't want to have to like teach their mind how to do it. I just wanted to get straight to the memorization, which isn't a good facilitator thing on my aspect, by the way. That's a bad facilitator. So don't do that if you're trying to be a good facilitator, anybody out there. But yeah, you have to get their mind to actually understand the concept and not just like make them regurgitate memorization and whatnot. So I'd say that's pretty hard. That's very, very hard. It takes I mean that's hard. In terms of, what was the last thing that you said?
Well, brain stress as a kid.
Brain stress. Oh, yeah. I think that's pretty important. I think that's very, very important. I think it could be a little detrimental. In my case, my brain stress, they're not listening, hopefully. My brain stress as a kid was I would basically hear my parents argue like 24/7. I would probably say out of 7 days of the week, 7 of them, all 7 or 6 at least, for probably 8 hours every day. Like I had to hear that. And like as a kid, because I think kids are basically really narcissistic. They like view everything through their own lens. The problem is that if you do that with a kid, you're basically making the kid think that the reason those parents are arguing is because of the kid. Like the kid points it on himself, right? Which is like a really weird thing. So I think that could. I don't know if that's a good thing because like if you
I'm not talking like about brain stress as a whole. Like just stressing the kid out. Please,
oh
nobody do that. Like nobody.
yeah
Like,
yeah
like I'm saying, let's say the camp drivers, they have very good spatial memory. So if you put a kid, let's say, okay, I don't think that would be such a good example, but let's say to play Minecraft, they might actually become more creative and have better spatial intelligence. Like again, like please guys don't put your kids to play Minecraft or like stuff like that. Please don't. Don't give them tablets, please. But yeah, like this kind of stress that I mean. Like give them very, very hard tasks and like they
Oh,
will develop
as a
smarter.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, I would say that's actually pretty important. I think it's also sort of similar. That actually could be very similar in terms of like exercise and development. When you're, I don't necessarily think you would see it in a tangible sense as easily. But for instance, when you like put a kid, when a kid's basically exercising or working out or whatever, in that case, they're going through tissue remodeling of that specific thing, right? So if they're like working out their legs a lot, then and they're doing a lot of jumping and they're doing a lot of running and they're basically causing the blood to flow in that area, right? Then that area could grow more as time progresses, and the same could maybe be applied to the brain as well in this case when you're saying what you're saying exactly, which is basically you're stressing one part of the brain out, the leg part of the brain. I don't know what you want to refer the legs part to, right? You could refer it to the back of the brain or wherever, it doesn't really matter. But you're basically training that spatial awareness part of the brain. You could be training the how they approach stress part of the brain. You can approach metacognition, how they look at their own thoughts. And there's a lot of so there's a lot of things that you can. I think it's pretty important that you train them as a kid, if you're able to, anyways. If your parents don't teach you this, which they probably won't, but in most cases. But it's pretty important, I think, to train yourself in a lot of aspects, especially when you're younger, because when you get older, I think there's a lot of people like are doing a lot of catch up with this stuff. Like they have anger issues as they're older, and they haven't necessarily like resolved that when they were younger. For instance, as one example, they might not necessarily know how to socially interact with people as well, and that's because they haven't done it when they were younger, or maybe they have. Because I know that a lot of language, for instance, like when children are developing, especially me, for instance, I would probably say I'm a really great example of this, is I was exposed to a lot of languages when I was younger. And because of that, whenever I start speaking in that language, I don't have that accent. So I don't have an accent of that language or whatever. So I would say that's probably pretty, that's another aspect of like training the brain in a specific way, right? That's pretty important, I would say. Yeah, definitely. As a kid, I think putting stress on the brain is pretty important. Not the stress that I was talking about initially. I'm talking not the like arguing and making
Not emotional stress, please.
Yeah, not the emotional stress. The other kind of stress. Basically, like training how to use your brain and stuff. Yeah. I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, my daughter is gonna be born in 2 weeks, and I came to Paraguay so that I can freely homeschool her. Paraguay is one of the few countries where you have absolutely unregulated homeschooling. So some things that I'm gonna teach her are those skills. Instead of just being like, hey, you need to know math. Hey, you need to know math is in a certain way important, but oh, you need to know history, you need to know geography, like blah blah blah. I'm gonna be like, okay, you're gonna train metacognition. You're gonna train brain structure. You're gonna train this. So yeah,
Exactly.
my philosophy in homeschooling is like, I'm gonna give my kids the best tools so they can be themselves. That's my philosophy in homeschooling.
Yeah. I agree. Something very similar to me probably as well. Because I think they're going to be them. You can't necessarily control them. You can guide them in a direction maybe, but they are going to be them in the end. And it's really important that you teach them how to navigate themselves as well as probably the world within that time frame. Yeah. Instead of just like teaching you math or teaching you calculus, because
Yeah.
yes, you need to
Yeah.
know calculus. You need to know calculus, by the way. Absolutely need to. So
Oh,
yeah,
for God's
exactly.
sake.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah, oh, I'm gonna learn calculus for what? Yeah, because one day if you're projecting your own house, then you might actually need to do the bearing
Yeah, exactly.
calculation structure. The
Exactly.
bearing structure calculation is like, oh, sure, everybody's gonna do that. Like, sure,
Yeah.
you need basic math. You should be able to do multiplication, division, and like percentages and stuff like that, like very quickly. But it's easy. Like, you should be done with basically all math you need in 1 to 2 years. That's it. If you're smart, 1 year, six
Yeah.
months, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was gonna get into something about. Okay, so I'm gonna like share a bit of what I think can also help a lot with cognitive ease, cognitive development, like basically becoming smarter, or let's say becoming less dumb. So, of course, I'm not gonna talk about sleeping properly and eating properly, because like that's obvious. Like if you're not sleeping properly and eating properly, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like there are situations where you can't, but like focus on that first. Like focus on the basics before you go to like doing cognitive training with like state of the art cognitive tools. Don't. So I would say so many people are stressed and they can't do stuff like their executive function doesn't work. So they can't prioritize which tasks to do first. They can't have the proper control of their emotions. And like, sure, you shouldn't exactly control your emotions, but you should be able to say, okay, I'm angry, but now it's not a productive time to be angry. Let me vent this out at another moment. Like, that's healthy. Anyway, not just suppressing your emotions. Anyway, focusing, for example, 12 hours straight on something that you like want to do or have to do. Anyway, so I think one of the biggest ways to do that. Oh, by the way, are you listening? I don't know. I think
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
screen froze. Oh, no,
Uh.
okay. You were just like you had just stopped there.
Oh, really?
You were
Okay.
just not moving. I was like, is it frozen?
Yeah, it's just like stuck there or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think one of the things that's happening with people, they're extremely overloaded with like a number of things, and I'm not even talking about intense things, but a number of things. And frankly, people that are not as smart, like they're not born with such a plastic brain, long neurons, and other things, they don't have like their box is smaller, so they can fit a big number of things. And let's say you have your church to go to, you need to attend to your kids, and then you live in a country where you need to vaccinate your kids, and then you need to figure out what's the best diet for your kids. You need to get them from school, send them to school, help them with homework. Then you need to go to your job. You have 10 things to do in your job, and then you're stressed about money, and then something breaks in your house. Then you need to pay the mortgage. Like, how the hell do you live? Like, literally, how do you live? So,
Yeah.
and let's say this is gonna be like very, very quick. I don't want YouTube to do anything, but let's say someone talks about politics, about whatever it is, like, and say, okay, vote for me, and there is a slight benefit, there's a slight ease for you. You're gonna do it, and I don't think that even works. That's another point, but you're gonna do it because you don't have the mental space to process it. Let's say somebody says, oh, let's go out and let's go drink alcohol. You're not going to say, oh, no, because I don't think this is the best decision for my future. And I think that in 10 years, if I drink alcohol, my brain's going to be 10% worse and blah, blah, blah. You're not going to think that
Yeah.
because your brain's full. It's like when you have a computer and the RAM and CPU's like over the top and it's burning. It's
Yeah.
basically the same thing. Anyway, so I think if you take away the number of things you have in your life and you hyper optimize that, then at least you're not necessarily smarter, but you have all your cognition at your disposal to do what is important. So, for example, people are like, oh, but I like to eat different meals, meal prep. Meal prep. If you're not even like following actually healthy diet, if you're not carnivore, animal based, primal, let's say you're like standard American diet, like cook all your rice, cook all your chicken, and like put some fruits there, and then you're not gonna have to worry about food for I don't know 4 or 5 days. Then let's say you're gonna homeschool your kids or you're gonna send them to school. Okay, you know the time that you're gonna pick them up from school and you're gonna take them. You don't need to worry about that. Use a calendar. Then you start doing that and you start taking away things from your life. Okay, oh, I need to clean my bed. I need to make my bed. Okay, don't have a bed, sleep on the floor. And you don't need to worry about that. Oh, and it's like kind of decision theory, but you need to make so many decisions about what you're gonna wear today. Well, wear the same thing, or like have a basic wardrobe. And then you start taking away these things and you start focusing on what's important. And anyway, then you like become hyper focused and your brain can actually learn and you can actually rest. And instead of being 100 things in your brain, because there are 100 things in your brain. If you start writing down things, you're thinking about so much random things.
Yeah.
Anyway, you take all of them out, you have more energy and you can rest more deeply. You have more energy even for the things that are not that important. So I think that's a very, very big thing.
Yeah, don't overload yourself. Yeah, because especially as a kid, I know a lot of kids today are pretty much overloaded. Like they have to worry about like 7 different homework assignments from 7 different classes, and then they have after school classes apparently, after school tutoring, and then after that they have after school intramurals, which basically is like sports stuff and whatever. So yeah, I think a lot of kids they're definitely overloaded.
Yeah.
They are really, really overloaded today. I was one of those kids, actually, in some sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and it's not good at all. And something that people don't know that if you suppress that being emotion, a thought, or anything, it doesn't go away. Thoughts, emotions don't go away. You just don't think about them, but they keep having an impact in your body. So you can try to suppress things and let's say, oh, I'm stressed, I'm gonna browse TikTok. Then you see 10 different bad news and you're like, oh my God, the world is crumbling. And the thing is still in your body, still having like wreaking havoc, and then you're really overloaded. So yeah, it's very important for cognition. Like genuinely, I was talking to a friend of mine, even like this can go to financial health. We were talking and she said, okay, how do you save so much money? I was like, well, my 2 expenses are rent and the supermarket. But okay, do you buy this? Do you buy this? No, why would I? I don't need to.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's, I'd say it's pretty important. Yeah, don't, like, as a kid, I mean, that's probably the biggest reminder for me is just as a kid, like, especially as a kid, there's a really good chance you might be overloaded. Like you really might be overloaded with the amount of work that if you're sort of forced to do stuff like I did basically, which is like have a sports do sports afterwards, and then you have like 7 different homework assignments from 7 different classes, and then you have like a project, and then you have to prepare for like an event that's happening and stuff. Yeah, definitely.
You're like the trophy kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, like coming back a little bit to video games. So there are many different video games. They can train different things. And I think that, okay, if you don't use something, that thing's also going to like, let's say atrophy in your brain. So if you stop recalling things, you stop remembering things, and you just go, hey, ChatGPT, what about this? Hey, ChatGPT, what about that? Even like if you start, oh, do my assignment, like school is weird, so you shouldn't really dedicate yourself to that, except if you have a very good plan. But anyway, then you're losing your ability to write and form ideas. So I think certain video games, not specific ones, but like certain classes of video games are going to train, let's say, motor skills and eye coordination, but they might, let's say, lower your working memory and lower something else. So
Yeah.
what kinds of video games do you think are actually good and which ones are actually bad?
Ooh. Ooh. Oh, that's a tough question. Okay. I think. Oh, this is tough. So, in my view, I usually think there's a lot of like nuance to whether or not something is good or bad in this case. So, good or bad could be, you could interpret this word in a lot of ways. But I would. It could be interpreted a lot of ways. Because you could be playing something which is not necessarily, I wouldn't say like it would help your brain in any sense, but it could just be enjoyable because it could be training some aspect that you don't even need trained. like I guess you could say like, oh, I'm like a gold brigadier general, or I forgot what the max rank is in CS:GO exactly, but I'm like immortal or something in Valorant. I'm like a really high rank or whatever in Valorant, and that's basically like you have very fast reaction time and you have very fast hand-eye coordination, but is that something that you really need all the time? Like, do certain people need that? And it's like, this is, it's really tough. Good video games versus bad video games. I think the question, there's a lot of ways.
Which classes of video games would you think are generally dysfunctional for a person's brain, and which are generally beneficial for a person's brain in terms of being adaptive?
Adaptive. Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of being adaptive, I would probably say, okay, so definitely I would say League of Legends, a MOBA, RTS, any sort of game. Age of Empires is one. League of Legends, Dota 2, Dota. There's even some StarCraft. There's a lot of examples. Civilization. There's a lot of different games like that, I would say, which probably help with that adaptive sense. In terms of which ones don't help you be adaptive, I would probably, most likely, it would have to be some game which is very short. So it's something that you could, for instance, play very quickly. Like you could play it on your phone. That I can't necessarily come up with an exact game off the top of my head because I don't necessarily play much else besides League of Legends, honestly. But in terms of being adaptive, it would probably have to be some very short form game that doesn't necessarily make you. It doesn't force you to change because the rules are set in stone. The rules are very set, and it's the same repetitive gameplay over and over again. I don't necessarily know a game like that off the top of my head. Maybe you could say something like Temple Runner, or I can't remember what the Subway Surfer, I think the name is. It's like a really short game. You're basically repeating the same thing over and over again. You're like moving left, right, or jumping, right? Maybe something like that, but then that would only be negative towards adaptation. It would probably help in terms of like speed and reflexes, but in terms of adaptation, I'd probably say a game like that would definitely not be as ideal.
Yeah, and there's like the point of atrophy in the brain. Because I think, let's say certain video games, let's say Subway Surfers, that was like extremely popular some years ago. I don't know if it's still popular, maybe. It's so simple that I think people might still like it. Anyway, let's say you're just scholars, and you're playing that for hours and hours on end, but because it's so easy that it becomes compulsive. So that's gonna, let's say, atrophy your impulse inhibition in your brain. So that's, let's say, a thing I have with the video games. I'm like, okay, which ones might actually be beneficial because they're training you to problem solve in like harder and harder ways, like progressively harder ways, and which ones actually like give you the illusion. Let's say FPS games. People are like playing FPS and they say, "Oh, kids have better hand-eye coordination." Okay, but is that useful? And what about the other things? What about addiction and things like that? So I'm like, okay, I think so many video games might actually have so many atrophying parts, and people can be aware of those, but if you are be wearing those already, you probably aren't the person that should be worrying about it.
Yeah.
And people that should be worrying about it aren't the person that are going to worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good it's a really good question in terms of like the which video games would I consider good or bad. Like it's a genuinely good question because it does make me think a little bit more as to the details. Because I do think video games, in my view, anyways, I think video games are pretty good because they teach you, at least if you pick the right ones, anyways, they could really teach you like how to think about a problem, or to make you realize sometimes like the way you are thinking about your thoughts and the way you are actually perceiving your own thoughts rather than just living in your own head and living in the ego is what I like to call it. So Yeah, that's a really good question. I'd have to find a list of video games. I'd probably have to just like look at a ton of video games and try to find
Yeah.
myself like which ones I would consider good or bad. But I would probably say the in terms of the adaptability one, it would definitely be ones which constantly which one are I'd probably say that's actually a really big one. If you add competition, usually to anything for that matter, you always like exacerbate the effect of how good somebody has to get. So that's why, like, if you like look at a competitive CS:GO player versus like a regular one, right? The competitive one can probably just like 1v5 and kill everybody. But I don't know, a competition that's not League of Legends, that's not Dota. Most of these games I noticed like they're all competition based. The ones that I would say are like adaptability, that train adaptability really well. And the reason they do is because they
Yeah.
basically force you to constantly see that you're wrong. They force you to see this was a mistake that you made. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. And you're supposed to recognize that mistake and like improve upon it in a future game. So,
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Like searching for the parts of video games that are actually good. Let's say, and I think this point was absurdly good. Like competition. If you like just insert competition into it, you're gonna make people get progressively better. Like,
yeah,
because they're gonna keep competing more and more and more and more until they're like experts at something.
yeah,
So I think that's a good one. Well, I think novelty, something that I actually got with ChatGPT, the term, was it emergent play under tight constraints? Like you constrain it and you give a person like a few resources they can work with, and they need to get something creative done and something progressively harder so that it trains creativity and it trains you to like figure out how to, not say follow rules, but how to bend the rules to your advantage. I think that's something very useful in life.
oh yeah,
Socializing as well. I think that certain games, video games or games as a whole, can help you socialize.
yeah, yeah. Actually, that's a
Even like
really
learn
good point.
languages. Well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of things. Yeah, you've actually brought up a lot of points. There's especially the socialized thing. I know a lot of people got that from an MMO. Like most people, their social life back in the day, or at least during like partially sort of during my time, anyways. More so like kids from the 95 or so or 90s. They basically played WoW, and WoW was like that game was huge when it comes to socializing. I mean, people there'd be like tons and tons of people. Everybody would be playing together. You'd be forced to cooperate together and work together in some way. And you could also manipulate the other person by stealing gear, for instance. That was another thing that was done. But yeah, there's yeah, yeah, man, you're bringing up a lot of other ones that I like. I don't necessarily think about too much myself. Like the social aspect, I definitely don't think about that when it comes to video games. But you're right. You're definitely right. That's a really big aspect as well.
yeah, and I keep thinking like, okay, and what are the bad parts? Let's say if you have a video game that's extremely colorful, and let's say there are too many sounds get hyper-stimulated, and then like you don't get dopamine from healthy things. So I think let's say you're more likely to neglect your environment because your environment isn't as stimulating as that game is. So I think certain things might be bad, but again, that's game design. People want to keep you in the game. Anyways, but I think that you can make healthy games.
Yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And
I
I'm
think it's
yeah.
yeah.
And I think like yeah, we had the positive aspects and like I can think of like negative aspects. But anyway, I think it's not about the video game itself, but about the aspects it chooses to have, the good and bad ones.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Because there are definitely some video games I think that don't encourage as good aspects, or that I wouldn't necessarily say I think they should be played as much. I mean, you could play them, but I personally I would look at it and I go, it's not as advantageous or it's not as good. But then it does depend on your profession, and it depends. Like there's a lot of nuance to it, I guess. But yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah. And there's something I don't remember the name exactly, but I think it's Graham's hierarchy of debates. And like this is something I really liked about your perspective and your cognitive profile. You like to go deep into things and explain your reasoning behind it. And the deeper you go, you can like stop a debate right in the beginning. Because if you get to the central point, you refute that, or you actually learn what the actual points are, then you basically don't even need to debate.
Yeah, yeah,
So, yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
actually went to some professional debates and like I loved to do that when I was in school. So, and I didn't even know about this hierarchy, but I actually unconsciously did it. And this is something like when I'm learning, I think, okay, this is for anybody that's watching. If you're learning something, try to learn what is the actual thing behind everything, such as when we were talking about longevity and the candle theory, let's say the candle versus something that can grow. Okay, so that's the actual difference. You don't need to learn absolutely everything about it if you know the root of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, you cut
Hey,
out there.
oh, hey,
Yeah. You cut out there. Did you say anything or no?
okay. No, no, I had
No.
stopped. No.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, do you have questions for me?
Not that I'm aware of. You've given me a lot to think about, if anything. You've given me more to think about in terms of like, what is a good video game? Like, what isn't a good video game? Because that's definitely something
Now
that's
you
gonna
have more
stick.
content.
Yeah, exactly. I have more content because I mean, I definitely do want to make stuff about like how I think because I really do think there's a lot that can be gained from video games and more so the benefits like training the mind rather than the muscles because people are so focused on the muscles and they're not. I feel like they're missing like how humans basically evolved and how we really, I guess you could say, like conquered everything was just through laziness almost. Like I mean, compared to another animal, like we would not move as much. We're like sitting inside the entire time. Like if you're a noble or whatever back in the day, you're sitting inside a pretty decent amount of time. You're spending your time like reading books. You're trying to become literate because most of the population back then wasn't literate, right? You're trying to. There's a lot of this stuff where I look at it and I'm like, wow, like this is. So what would make a good video game? Like what are the defining aspects of a good video
Laziness
game
moves
versus
the world.
Say that again. Wait, you cut that? You cut out. Say that again?
Laziness moves the world.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. So that's a really it's a good thought. It's a good thought. It's definitely a good thought. I'm definitely probably that's most likely going to be my next thing, like training the mind, something along those lines. I mean, my channel's already pretty um, too diverse in content for YouTube to like me. YouTube does not like me, and therefore, yeah, my views used to be pretty good back then. They used to be really good, getting 4K average, and that's because you have to. The way YouTube's algorithm, from what I'm aware of, works is it wants to put you in a niche category. So, for instance, if you're like carnivore or whatever, right, it wants to put you in the carnivore community only. But then if you start like introducing other content into your channel, then it's like I don't know where to put you, right? Like where are you supposed to go? So that's the only problem, but oh well.
Yeah,
No,
but like your content is very high quality. Like I appreciate it. And I think like the people that actually watch you are people that are like really deep into that.
yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. I'm glad. I'm really glad to hear that. No, definitely. I mean, the fact that you're talking with me here as is, I think it's a good indicator to me. It's like, okay, well, I'm definitely somebody's clearly interested. They're like really want to talk to me, right? So that's an indicator. Like I must be, in some sense, I probably am doing something partially right, anyways. Hopefully, hopefully I
Yeah,
am.
and you're doing your own thing. Like this is something that I'm big in. Like when I'm reading books and I see that people are doing the like, oh, I'm a very good writer and I write with this structure and BPP, blah 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 blah. I'm like, oh. But when I see like a book that sometimes it's badly written, but there's an original idea there and the person like keeps growing and like fermenting that in the book, I'm like, well, okay, this is good. And when the person has both, they write well and in their unique way. I'm like, so this is
Yeah.
you basically. There are very few YouTube channels that I actually like. I watch some, but there are very, very few that I actually like, and most of them are below like 1,000 subscribers.
Oh
Like you're
man.
one of the biggest channels I actually watch frequently.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
If I'm a big channel, that sort of makes me wonder what the smaller channels look like. Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's wow, that's interesting. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, I'll be making very strange content compared to, or at least what would be considered strange content most likely. Because I view my channel at this point more so, initially the real reason behind why I made my channel was actually basically to teach my kids information that I would deem as valuable in that sense. So that's sort of why maybe I like am really diverse with my topics, because I'm looking at this and I'm going like I'm basically introducing a lot of this stuff to my kids anyways. So I'll just throw it on YouTube and I'll be like, whatever, so be it, right? And I'll make it more of like an audience sort of thing, right? Like talking to the audience, talking to the camera as a YouTuber. But in the end, that's basically the initial purpose behind my channel, was pretty much like, there are certain fundamental things I think it's really important for my kids to know. I think eating healthy and sort of knowing a little bit why. You don't necessarily need to know into like go into the details behind it, in my opinion anyways. You just need to sort of realize that like, one of the best things that you could do is just feel the difference. Like if you feel the difference between eating trash versus not eating trash, that's a really clear indicator of like, wow, like this person, me for instance, I am able to think and focus on a task for like 5 or 6 more hours just by eating healthy, just by eating correctly. Just like that's one thing I think is really important. Lifestyle, some important things about lifestyle and why I do what I do. I think that's also pretty important. Thinking in general and relationships. I think relationships are pretty important because a lot of people, especially in the United States anyways, they approach relationships and they're sort of expecting this, I don't really like saying it, but they're expecting this sort of like a one-itis kind of thing, where they're like the soulmate. And when they do that, they're limiting themselves to not only seeing other options, but they're also training their mind in a way which I've noticed makes them naturally unattractive to women in the future, which is actually that's probably the biggest thing in my view. That's a really, really big thing that people have a huge problem with. They're like so disconnected from other people that they don't even know how to interact. And then once they finally do start wanting a relationship and they get that old, they can't even get it. And that's probably somebody like Rehab Room might be a really good example of that, where he's basically this guy. He's this really black pill guy from what I'm aware of. And he's like always talking about like how genetics and it's always about being a Chad and stuff. And it's like, but there's a lot more to it than just that for like human connection. Like that might initial matter for the initial part of human connection in terms of like the initial courting stage, but it doesn't actually, I don't think that means much in the long term, because even Chads get cheated on from what I'm aware of. Like even Austin Dunham or whatever, I think he's another example of this, where he even says it himself, like even Chads get cheated on. And like if Rehab Room literally just watched an Austin Dunham short of Austin Dunham saying this, a Chad himself saying, even I get cheated on, that should hopefully like make his worldview change and go, I'm wrong. Like it's not all about looks. There's something else to it and I just don't know what it is, right? That hopefully would trigger in his mind, but it doesn't. And a lot of people are sort of stuck in this defeatist mindset because of that. And it really ruins their life, I think. So that's one of the reasons why I think the relationships playlist is also important. It's also important to understand the fundamental differences behind people, because not everybody is just equal. Like you don't just like get spawned into the world and not everybody has like a 10 in strength, right? No, yeah, right? Like you have like a set stat for whatever, right? So I think it's there's a lot of really important things to know in the world. And it's not just relationships, it's not just health, it's not just lifestyle. I mean, there's so many things. And it's just learning how to think is really, really important. I don't know how to teach that. Yeah. I try my best. I don't know how to teach it.
Well, I know how to teach that to kids. I don't know how to teach that on YouTube to adults.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's what I'm sort of trying to do.
Yeah, I can actually share with you a good part of my homeschooling plan, because most of it's in here, but I have some of it written down and I can show you later if you want, or at another time.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah, we could do it another episode. I have, right now we're at an hour and 46 minutes-ish.
Really?
Yes, we are at an
No way.
hour. I know. I didn't even
Wow.
expect that. I know. Time flies by. Time flies by. But yeah, that's. There's a lot of definitely given me a lot to think about in terms of like not just content in the future that I could make, but also like genuinely what does make a good video game, what doesn't make a good video game. A lot of interesting things.
Yeah. Okay, let's leave the rest for another episode then.
Yes.
Because
Well-
like we can talk and we can reach like 3-4 hours easily.
Yeah. No, I could probably make this. I could probably make this like a I don't know if I'd call
Split
it
it.
a series. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So I could make this like a series sort of split thing where it's like series 1, series 2, series 3. So yeah, this is a very interesting talk. So everybody, thank you for watching, guys. This is Kevin Michael
Mielke.
Mielke. Okay, Kevin Mielke.
Yeah.
If he has a YouTube channel, if you want to sub to his YouTube channel, go ahead. He's pretty interesting. Definitely gave some pretty interesting thoughts as well. And I also like the one thing he said that I really do like actually is the fact that he said originality, like of the YouTuber, like willing to say other things that and not necessarily just be like that classic. The way you explain the person who's writing the book or whatever, basically. I like that. That was very interesting. So I will keep up the originality. I will purposefully not go down that other path because personally I don't necessarily like it that much, and I don't think it teaches that much as well. So yeah, thanks again for watching, guys. I hope you learned something valuable. I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Exactly.
Peace.